Hi there, my name is Shelby Forsythia, and I am so excited today to be giving you a mini preview of my brand new book, Your Grief, Your Way with Penguin Random House. And I've already got some tabs in here ready for things I'm going to read you. But I'm excited for this book to be live and in the world because in the aftermath of my mom's death in 2013, all I really wanted was tidbits of wisdom, like tiny, tiny things that I could do every single day to come back from her death. I think I had this myth, like a lot of grievers do, that I could tackle my grief in one fell swoop. And the longer I lived with her death as a reality in my life, the more I realized, oh, holy cow, this is going to be an everyday activity until my own death. And so learning how to incorporate grief into my life in little pieces every single day instead of facing the pressure to swallow the project of grief whole was really comforting and nourishing to me. But I struggled to find something that was a daily devotional. I struggled to find something that was non-religious, that was not like Zen or full of meditations or things that were way too fluffy for me to access. I needed something that was comforting and practical and down to earth and made me feel seen and heard and comforted and welcomed. And I have finally written this book. So this book is a gift to the younger self that I was in 2013 when I lost my mom at the age of 21, but it's also a gift to you wherever you are in your grief. If you have lost someone to death, if you are navigating life after the death of a loved one, this is a book that's going to be helpful to you. And it's literally, I'll kind of start to flip through the pages here, but it's a year's worth of quotes from grieving people, advice that I've used with my clients and on myself, and these little kind of touchstones of inspiration, and really this core message of you're going to make it out of this alive, because that's not a piece of faith that I had after my mom died. I thought this thing changed my life so dramatically and in such a core way. I am not going to make it out of this experience alive. And so every single day of this book, every single entry that you read, every single exercise, there's this undertone of you can do your grief your way. You can absolutely customize this experience to whatever your grief is or however you're figuring out your grief means, but you are also going to make it out of this experience alive. You're going to be okay. And at the end of the day, too, you are not alone. There is someone, myself, but also all the other grieving people who've been quoted in this book who have walked through the same experience that you're walking through right now and have lived in your shoes. So let's jump in with a couple of entries. I bookmarked two of my favorites. And how this is laid out is that at the top of each page, you'll find a quote and a little kind of my thoughts about the quote or things that I've heard from grieving people or from scientific studies or from clients that I work with. And then underneath it, you'll get an exercise that's somehow related to this quote. So these two pieces of information, this the top and the bottom, are tied into each other. And then it goes throughout the whole year. And there's no really arcs or themes. And the reason I did that is so that you could jump into this book at any time. I'm filming this on September 17th, 2020, and we could literally jump in on September 17th and start going. This is not a book that requires you to start at January 1st, and it's also not a book that requires you to use it as a daily devotional. You won't miss anything if you just jump in at will. A lot of people play this game that I've heard of with the Bible where they just flip it open and see what resonates with them and hope that they don't find a verse in Leviticus. Or the Old Testament. But you can do the same thing with this book. Also, you can flip it open to any page. Right now I'm on June 5th. And you can read a piece of wisdom and hopefully it resonates with you in your grief too. So in Your Grief Your Way, you can customize the experience of grieving to fit your own grief, but you can also customize the way that you read this book. So, sorry, that was a bit of a tangent. Let's get into some entries. So the passage that I'm reading from right now, I'm going to read both the entries for February 20th. That's a lie. I'm going to read February 22nd and February 23rd. So the one at the top of the page here and the one in the middle of the page here. February 22nd. The bereaved need more than just the space to grieve the loss. They also need the space to grieve the transition. Linda Sheldon-Fell. When we grieve, we are grieving more than just the person we lost. We are also grieving the life we knew before and the person we used to be. With a loved one's death, we step into a liminal space. We've stopped living our old life, but we've not yet stepped into our new one. And being in that transitional in-between is worth grieving. If you're in this space, Give yourself grace and mercy. Everyone who has ever grieved has been exactly where you are right now. Everyone has had to grieve their own transition. And this quote is really special to me, not only because I'm dear friends with Linda Sheldon-Fell, who wrote the Grief Diaries series of books, but because especially right now, in the midst of COVID-19, here in September 2020, we are all grieving some sort of state of transition. So there's always the grief that comes with the death of a loved one, and we can see that, and it's tangible, and their body is gone, it's no longer in our life. But there's some other kind of unspoken grief too, the grief of transition, the grief of having to move through something that you didn't ask to or want to move through in your life, and the grief of being in this in-between space of uncertainty, of not knowing, of kind of this pendulum hanging in midair. It hasn't swung to the other side yet. We haven't gotten there yet. And there's grief in being in that space. And that's really why I wanted to put that entry here in February 22nd. So the accompanying exercise the next day, piece of study for February 23rd, reads as such. February 23rd. 3 powerful phrases. Right now, in this moment, and for the time being, added onto any spoken or thought sentences, let the people around you know you're in a state of transition and that you're doing the best you can. For example, I'm not ready to clean out Mom's house sounds final, as if you might never clean out your mother's home. I'm not ready to clean out Mom's house right now lets both you and others know that this decision is where you are today and that you are open to cleaning out your mom's home in the future. Try using this tool when welcoming or turning away guests. We're not accepting visitors for the time being. Making big decisions about your career. In this moment, I'm comfortable going back to work. And forming social plans. I don't feel like going to tomorrow's fundraiser right now. Knowing that you do not have to decide everything definitively today can help you feel like you have more room to breathe. And I love this exercise. I bring this in usually session 1 or session 2 with almost all of my clients, because there's a pressure, especially in westernized society, to know for sure who we are, to have our identities set in stone, to have our schedule set in stone, to have our kind of like our daily itinerary set in stone. And in grief, sometimes it's just not possible. And so using these, I call them like freedom words, right now, for the time being, in this moment, you can frame your actions and your thoughts as things that are in transition, as things that are temporary, that are free to change at any time. And it helps when you're in conversation with other people. So it's like, I'm not able to emotionally pick up Dad's ashes from the crematorium right now. Maybe you can do it next week, or maybe you can send somebody else to go. It frees you up to have other options, is a lot different than I'm not ready to pick up Dad's ashes from the crematorium, which is very definitive and very final. It also helps when you're making decisions about your work life, about childcare plans, about selling or cleaning out the house, a lot of other things that will eventually need doing in the aftermath of loss and will need deciding, but maybe they don't all need deciding today. And so these words that can free you and help you feel like you have more space to breathe right now, for the time being, in this moment, can be really intensely helpful in the aftermath of loss. And I hope as you're watching this is something that you'll start to use in your grief as well. One more entry that I want to read, a collection of 2, is from August 26th and August 27th. And these are another couple of my favorite tips in the book. I wrote them all, so I kind of favor them all. But there are some in particular that are super, super powerful, and I wanted to share these with you today. August 26th. Grief jumps out at you when you're least expecting it. Dominic Cooper. Every griever knows that grief pops out at the most unexpected moments. I once fled a department store because a woman ahead of me in the checkout line looked just like my mom, and this is a true story. There's no way to predict when grief will arrive. If you're feeling caught off guard by grief, you are not alone. It catches every grieving person by surprise. August 27th. If you shared a home with the person who died, you know the unique agony of continuing to receive magazine subscriptions and junk mail addressed to your loved one. These magazines and little pieces of paper can be enormous triggers for grief and can send you spiraling when you least expect it. For 1 month, place every piece of junk mail you receive for your loved one into a pile. Then, at the end of that month, make a list of all the senders' names and phone numbers. If a phone number isn't listed on the piece of mail itself, you can usually find contact information by doing a quick Google search. When you've got all of the phone numbers ready, work your way down the list, calling each sender to request that your loved one be unsubscribed from their mailing list. If letting perfect strangers know that your loved one has died is too much for you, outsource this task to a friend or family member. It's an easy enough job for anyone who tells you, "Let me know if there's anything I can do." And I love this tip especially because I was this person in my household. The first time I went home after my mom died, it was about 2 months after she died, I noticed on the counter there was this pile of junk mail and magazines and subscriptions that were all addressed to my mother that, of course, she could no longer use because she was dead. And I became the person in the house who was really gung-ho about let's clear the clutter, let's not be reminded about this every time we go to the mailbox. And I was the person who made this list, who wrote down the phone numbers of these magazines, these agencies, these credit card companies, all these places. And one day I sat down and called them all and said, please unsubscribe her from our list because she's dead. And it's a hard thing to do, to announce to strangers over and over and over again that someone you love has died. And so if you're not up to doing it, this is a really easy administrative task if you have a friend or a family member who's like really like task oriented or like to-do list oriented, to just go down the list and make these calls over and over again and unsubscribe your loved one from the list. And that way, every single time you go to the mailbox and get mail, you're not receiving these reminders that they are no longer there to receive letters, even if they're junk mail, that are addressed to them. And it's kind of one more way you can remove these little triggers of grief, because as Dominic Cooper said in that quote, grief jumps out at you when you're least expecting it. And this is one way and one place that grief jumps out, and it's a way that you can actually have a little bit of control over. You can take some of your power back in requesting that your loved one be removed from this list. So that's just four technically, entries from Your Grief Your Way, 2 pages, 4 entries. And this book goes 366 days. When I was first approached to write this book by Penguin Random House, they said a year of practical guidance for comfort and loss with only 365 days. And I said, no, we have to include leap year every year, because I guarantee you that somebody lost their loved one on leap year, and that day is going to be more important to them than any other day in this book. So 366 days of comfort and guidance to accommodate for leap year. There are tips in here for Halloween, navigating grief triggers on Halloween when a lot of people are decorating with caskets and skulls. There's what to do on Valentine's Day when everybody's celebrating love and your heart is absolutely shattered. This is a book that you can return to again and again and again and again. And if you're not grieving, but you know someone who is, it makes a tremendously powerful gift to give them after loss, because it's something that's really low touch. You don't have to sit down and read a novel. You don't have to try and keep up with the arc or like the plot or a storyline of a memoir that's really heavy. It's literally something you can flip open, say that's helpful, shut it, and go on to whatever you were doing. And especially if you have grief brain, if you're struggling to focus or kind of pin down your mind in the aftermath of loss, this is, each paragraph is maybe 200 words maximum. So it's not even maybe a 2-minute or 3-minute read each day at its longest. And then an application is very, very short as well. You usually don't need to buy anything to execute these tasks. You don't need to have anything in your kitchen, no secret ingredients required. It's very, if you are grieving or you know someone who is, this is the lowest touch possible way to remind them, A, you are not alone, B, other people have been here before, and C, there are things within your power to do that you can do every day to remind yourself that you're going to make it out of this alive. So if you'd like to order Your Grief Your Way, you can find it now anywhere books are sold. Thank you to Penguin Random House for providing international distribution on this. You can find this overseas. I have clients who are in Germany and France who are able to pre-order this book, as well as Australia. Right now it's only available in English, so stay tuned for any updates on that. But because you did hear me read it just now, I will let you know it is available as an audiobook. So if reading, the act of reading, is really, really hard for you in the aftermath of loss, try listening to the audiobook and see if that resonates a little better with you. Sometimes in grief, it's easier to listen and absorb than it is to read and focus and absorb. It's like you get to do one less thing when you're just listening to somebody else speak about their experience of loss. And if you like the book, I really encourage you to leave a review on Amazon, Goodreads, Google Books, anywhere that you leave reviews about books, because every time you do, you're helping somebody else who's grieved decide whether or not this is the book for them. And any feedback you have about the book, your favorite passages, your favorite quotes, things that really helped you along your journey of grief, maybe exercises that you did with your kids or modified to do with somebody else that you love, or if you started a book club around reading this group, or a book group around reading this book. You're getting all of my flubs and imperfections today. I would love to hear about that too. And of course, if you'd like to get in touch with me as the author of the book, you can reach me at shelbyforsythia.com. Available here to answer your questions. And Your Grief Your Way is available for pre-order now, officially on sale September 29th, 2020. And if you'd like to be part of a special exclusive book launch party, you can join me in the Your Grief Your Way launch team, where in exchange for receiving an early copy of the book, which I will give to you, and leaving a review on Amazon, you get a free ticket to attend a book launch party where we are popping non-alcoholic champagne. We're talking about the process of writing this in quarantine, which was one of the craziest experiences of my life, and I'm taking your questions on grief, loss, coming back, and doing your grief your way. And that's all happening on September 29th at 5 p.m. Pacific time. You can find out more about me and my work, other books that I've written, at shelbyforsythia.com, as well as if you'd like to work with me one-on-one. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll pick up Your Grief Your Way. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, and I am sending you so much love in the aftermath of whatever loss you are facing. I see you. I am so proud of you and the work that you're doing in the world, and I love you. Because even through grief, we are growing.